You came back whole, and that is what they cannot forgive. You walk back in, and the hands that reach for you close on nothing. Your return terrifies those who never saw it coming. Carl Jung names that emptiness, and it hides a fact about those handles you were never told. You came in braced for apology or applause. Neither comes, only a tightness in your throat as certainty collapses. By the end, you will know what those handles were. You will see why you were once so easy to read and what that legibility cost you. You will feel why the years you spent under looked from the outside like simple decline, and why your return then takes away the thing the whole room leaned on. And you will reach the fact this kind of story usually steps around. The reason a person who comes back ungrippable cannot be followed where they have gone. Their unease was never the prize. You came back without the handles they used to steer you by, and that is the thing they cannot follow you past. Start with the mechanism. A handle is a place on a person where someone else can take hold and move them. Not a metaphor for influence, but the literal thing. A spot you can be picked up by, turned, and set down somewhere else. Before you can understand why a room goes still when you return, you have to see how thoroughly you were once covered in them. You already know this in your body, even if you have never put a name to it. Someone's tone drops half a degree, and before a single thought arrives, you feel yourself rearranging, the apology already forming, the yes on its way out before you have decided anything. That is a handle being used. Someone reached, you moved, and the moving happened in the body long before it reached the mind. Consider a man. Call him 52. For most of his life, he is the one who answers the room, the one with the explanation ready and the steadying summary that lets a tense table breathe. His mind is fast and his armor is logic, and the people around him learn precisely where to take hold of him. A certain tone, and he defends himself. A certain disappointed silence, and he hurries to repair it. His brother has a line he has used for 30 years, some easy version of "there he goes again," and it works every time, because it always makes the man stop and explain himself. You were legible the same way. Everyone in your old life held a fixed read on who you were, a part you had agreed to play, and that part ran on your self-doubt. Jung calls the face we build for this the persona, the compromise we strike between who we are and what the room needs us to be. It is a working interface, a surface other people press to get a predictable result. The sensitive ones build a particular version of it. As a child, you learn to read the pressure in a room before your feet touch the floor, to feel which adult was carrying something heavy and arrange yourself around it so the piece would hold. You made yourself easy to carry so that no one would set you down and leave you behind. So the handles went on, one at a time, across years. A place they could take hold of when they wanted you agreeable. A place they could pull when you began to drift out of range. A place that kept you a size they could manage without effort. You called it being considerate, being a good son, a reasonable man who does not make scenes. What it amounted to was a body so covered in grips that anyone in the room could move you without rising from a chair. The strangest part is how much it felt like love, because being gripped and being held are nearly impossible to tell apart from the inside. You were needed, reached for, kept close. The man was proud of it. Being the reliable one, the one who could be counted on to absorb a mood and hand it back softened, was the closest thing he had to a sense of worth. A person made entirely of handles has no inside. There is only the set of surfaces other people are allowed to use, and a quiet suspicion, surfacing at odd hours, that if every grip let go at once, there might be nothing left standing underneath. But a self that exists to be moved has no ground of its own. Therefore, a day comes when the grips are no longer enough to hold you up. And from the outside, that day looks nothing like an awakening. It looks like a man quietly coming apart. When the structure finally gave way, you did not experience it as a beginning. You experienced it as a death. The old goals went hollow, the drive thinned to nothing, and the rooms you had given your whole life to began to feel like a coat sewn out of lead. You went quiet. You stopped reaching back when people reached for you. From the surface, this is indistinguishable from falling apart, which is why nearly everyone reaches for that word. The man knows this stretch in his body. There is a season where he sits in the car outside his house in the dark, the engine ticking as it cools, unable to make himself walk in and perform the evening one more time. He is convinced he is broken, that the sensitivity he spent decades managing has finally disqualified him from an ordinary life. His brother and his old colleagues watch him step out of the race, quietly revise their estimate of him downward, and call the lowered estimate realism. They are not cruel about it. They update the read and move on. And for a long while, the man agrees with them. He reads about what might be wrong with him and tries to force himself back into the old shape, doing everything correctly. It does not take. His body now treats the old life like a slow poison, a low nausea that rises the moment he picks the costume back up. What he is feeling is the part of him that already left refusing to be marched back in, and no amount of correctness will talk it into returning. The loneliest part is not the silence, but the way the people who love him read it. They take the quiet for the problem, when it is the only honest thing he has done in years. They want the old man back, the one who answered, and each attempt to hand him over costs more than the last. What none of them can see is what is happening to the grips. The hands still reach, but the places they used to find are quietly going slack. The approval arrives and meets nothing, because the part of him that turned approval into motion has gone still. The guilt arrives and finds no purchase. Jung is clear that this withdrawal of energy from the performed life is the psyche refusing, at last, to keep running a self-assembled for other people to work. It only wears the costume of a breakdown. This is the slowest and loneliest stretch, and there is no honest way to shorten it. The grips do not loosen on a schedule, and while they are loosening, you have no leverage at all, not even your own. So you sit in the dark car, ungripped and not yet able to move yourself, and the stillness convinces you it is the end of you. There is a specific terror in it, the fear that you have not become free but simply become nothing, that the quiet is a verdict and not a threshold. But that fear is reading the situation exactly backward. What is going slack is only the set of places you once held out for other people to use. The part of you underneath, the part the handles were fastened over, is not vanishing but surfacing for the first time. Therefore, what climbs back up out of this stretch is not the person who went down. And that single difference is the entire reason your return lands the way it does. It also carries, folded inside it, the fact about the handles you will not see until much later, the one that quietly changes what you do with the rest of your life. The shock your return delivers has little to do with whether you succeeded out there. The shock is the reach that finds nothing. When you walk back in, the places they always took hold of are simply not being offered, and a room that ran on those holds feels the floor tilt. The sequence is almost mechanical. The approval they extend no longer moves you, so their praise stops working as a way to steer. The disappointed silence no longer reaches you, so their guilt stops working as a brake. The small provocations that used to make you defend yourself slide off a surface with nothing held out to catch them. Jung gives this kind of reversal a name, enantiodromia, the law that any force driven hard enough toward one extreme will eventually flip and run the other way. The compliance you ran on for decades, compressed long enough, has turned clean into its opposite, and the turn does not arrive by polite degrees. It arrives all at once, which is why no one around you saw it coming. The man meets it at the family table. His brother pulls the 30-year line, there he goes again, and settles back to wait for the familiar defense. The defense does not come. The man's hand stays flat and still on the table. He feels the line arrive, recognizes the worn place it is aiming for, and watches it find nothing held out to take. He does not argue, and he does not perform a serene calm. He lets the sentence land and die in the open air, and across the table his brother's certainty wobbles, because the hold he has used his whole life has just come away with nothing in it. A person who cannot be read and who cannot be moved is a real problem for any arrangement that quietly depended on moving them. The structure does not come down in a clean crash. It hangs in the air, suspended, and everyone in the room can feel that something load-bearing is simply gone. Some of them rush to fill the silence, talking faster, offering you things, testing whether a smaller version of the old hold still works. Others go cold and decide that you have changed, that a little success went to your head, that you think you are better than them now. Both reactions are the same reaching. The hand patting you down for the grip it knows must be there somewhere, unable to believe a person it once moved so easily has simply become unmovable. But their faces in that suspended moment give it away, because the unease is not really about you at all. Therefore, the next question is the one that turns the whole thing. What is it their hands are actually reaching for when they reach for you and find only air? When the grips went slack, your surface did not only become ungrippable, it became smooth enough to throw back a reflection. For years, your sensitivity worked as a screen, where people set down whatever they did not want to carry, their anger, their fear, their private disappointment in themselves. You absorbed it, and they stayed comfortable. Jung describes the reclaiming of your own buried gold as the moment you stop serving as a screen for everyone else's shadow. A person who has stopped catching other people's darkness becomes, without meaning to, a mirror. So when the doubters look at your return and feel that cold drop in the stomach, the vertigo they would call simply being unsettled by you, they are not seeing you. They are seeing the reflection of a life they chose not to live. You went down into the dark and came back carrying something. They reached for the old hold to put you back in your assigned place and met their own face in the blank. And what looked back was every version of themselves they traded away to stay legible and safe. Jung points to the root of this, the way the strongest pull on a child is the life the parent never allowed themselves to live. The unlived life does not evaporate. It waits, and it leaks, and it goes looking for somewhere to be seen. Your return becomes the surface where, for one unbearable second, it is seen. That is why the reaction runs so far past anything you actually said. You did very little. You stopped holding out a screen, and the thing they had been setting on you for years came back to its owner. The man understands it the first time an old colleague tells him a long, polished story about how well everything is going. For the first time, he sees the seam, the exact place where the performance is stitched over the hollow behind it. The practiced ease laid across a quiet despair the colleague will never name. The man says nothing. He does not offer the soft, sympathetic noises he once produced on cue. He simply sees it cleanly, and the colleague feels himself seen, and the bright story runs down, because being met by a mirror is intolerable to anyone living at the surface. There is often one figure who used the old arrangement most directly, who does not drift off when the holds go slack. They keep watching from the edge of your life, not because they want you back, but because they are waiting to confirm that you dimmed without them. They watch the silhouette at the edge of their clearing, hoping it flickers. It does not. And it is not only the ones who used you who feel the chill, even the kind ones, the ones who genuinely wished you well, grow quiet around the returned you, because a mirror does not choose who stands in front of it. Anyone who built a life on a surface feels the cold of the glass, friend and stranger alike. That is the loneliest part of the return, that your new clarity does not sort the room into the ones who hurt you and the ones who did not. It shows each of them the size of their own unlived life, and almost no one is asked to see that. And here the doubters make an assumption about you, the same one you are about to make about yourself. They assume the hold simply fell off you in the dark. Therefore, to understand what your return actually took from them, you have to see what really happened to those handles, and it is not what anyone thinks. If you have felt the exact moment a hold they always had on you simply came away empty, you know how strange the quiet on the other side of it can be. Say it in your own words below, or borrow mine. I stopped being something they could steer. So you assume, the way they do, that the handles fell off you somewhere in the dark. That is not what happened, and the difference is everything. A handle is something you hold out, not a part of any body. No one is born with a place on them for other people to grip. The approval hold was a spot you extended so they would stay. The guilt hold was a spot you extended so they would not turn away. You offered them again and again until the offering wore a groove and you too forgot it had ever been a choice. The hold they had on you lived in the holding out and never once in you. Which means the thing that changed in the dark was never the breaking of your handles. You simply stopped extending them. The groove is still there, the old reflex to present a surface, but the hand no longer goes out to meet the reach. A person who has stopped offering a place to be held has nothing on them to take, because there was never anything there to begin with, only the steady and exhausting work of holding a surface out so it would be gripped. The man arrives at this slowly, long after the table goes quiet. For 30 years he believed his brother had a hold wired into him somewhere, a lever installed too early to remove. Now he sees there was no lever. There was a younger version of himself reaching out every single time, offering the explanation, presenting the place to be moved, and a brother who simply accepted what was held out. His brother was never gripping him. His brother was taking what the man kept extending, and the man has quietly stopped extending it. He tests it once, almost by accident. His sister calls, upset, and runs the old line that always pulled the long reassurance out of him. He feels the exact place where the words used to gather, and he simply does not send them. The silence on the line is the strangest thing he has felt in years, and underneath it is grief, not triumph. Because if the hold was always his own hand held out, then he was not only their victim, but in some quiet way, their teacher. He showed every one of them where to grip, rehearsed it with them for decades, and called the rehearsal love. Forgiving them turns out to be the easy part. The harder thing is forgiving the child who decided that being useful was the only safe way to be kept. This is the part that gets left out, because it removes the last comfort. You were not a thing with handles bolted to it against its will. You were the one holding them out, for reasons that made complete sense to a child who needed to be kept. That is heavier than being a victim, and it is also the door. If the grip was partly your own hand held out to meet theirs, then nothing has to be pried off you, and nothing has to be forgiven in them. You stop reaching out to be taken hold of, and the whole apparatus of being steered loses the only thing it ever ran on. Therefore, the only thing left to decide is what you do with the reach itself, because their hands do not stop reaching the moment yours goes still. The reach does not stop. The people who knew the old you keep reaching by reflex for years, and there is one place still left that you can hold out to them, the coldest one, and you can begin to offer it without ever noticing. You can hold out your fear of them. You can hold out your contempt. You can stand in the room and let them take hold of the part of you that needs them to feel small, that quietly enjoys the unease your presence creates, that keeps a private ledger of who is asleep. The instant you do, you are extending a place again. They have a hold again, and it is only a colder one. This is the move the people who savor their own return never quite catch themselves making. They came back. They felt the room go afraid of them, and they began to hold that fear out as the new surface to be gripped. It feels like strength. It is the old reflex in heavier clothes, the same hand reaching out to be taken, only now it reaches with disdain instead of apology. The need to be feared and the need to be approved of turn out to be one need, both of them a place held out so that someone else will close a hand around it. You can tell which one you are doing by a single quiet sign. The held out fear always needs an audience, because the part of you offering it is still asking the room to confirm something about you. The empty hand needs no audience. It can stand among people it neither fears nor flatters and feel no pull to shrink any of them, because it has simply run out of places to hold out. Jung points to this as the difference between being taken over by a feeling and being informed by one. You can feel the whole weight of the room, the warmth that is real and the warmth that is performed, and let none of it become an instruction. You can register someone's pain in full and decline to be drafted into fixing it. You can sense the unease you cause and leave it with its owner, neither smoothing it over nor feeding on it. This is harder than it sounds and lighter than you fear. Harder, because the reflex to hold out a surface fires 100 times a day. In the pause where you would once have apologized, in the silence you would have rushed to fill. Lighter, because each time you let the reflex pass without obeying it, a little more of the old exhaustion lifts, the specific tiredness of a person who has spent every waking hour presenting something to be gripped. You never knew how heavy the offering was until you set it down. The man knows the colder offering because for a season he made it. After the long humiliation of the descent, it felt clean to decide his brother was small, to enjoy how little the old line reached him. Then he caught the shape of what he was doing. He was holding out a place again, only this one was built of his own disdain, and his brother could take hold of it as easily as he once took the apology. So he set that down too. He sits at the table now, offering nothing and gripping nothing, and the empty quiet of his hands is not coldness, but the first time in 50 years that he has held nothing out to anyone. None of this arrives as peace, and you should distrust any version of the story that promises it will. Jung is honest that even a whole person never quite loses the ache of an inner discord, the friction between who they are and what the room keeps asking them to be. You feel that friction as sharply as ever. The one thing that changes is that you no longer answer it by holding out a surface to be moved. There is an old line, most reliably attributed to Jung, that no tree reaches the light without sending its roots down into the dark. The depth was never about growing tall enough to be feared, only about growing rooted enough that you no longer need to hold anything out in order to stay. Therefore, once your hands are finally empty, you begin to find out who was ever really reaching for you and not for the place you used to offer. So the crowd thins and the room goes quiet, and that quiet is the first thing the empty hands ask you to survive. The people who only knew you as a set of places to take hold of drift away once there is nothing to take, and for a while their leaving feels like a failure you caused. You spent a lifetime measuring your worth by how many hands were reaching toward you at once. But the ones who stay are the ones who were never reaching for a hold in the first place. They came toward the person and not the surface, and while the room was loud with grips, you could not always tell them apart from everyone else. In the quiet, they become visible. There are fewer of them than you feared, and far realer than you let yourself hope. And a small number of people who reach for you and not for a place to move you is a deeper wealth than the whole gripping crowd ever was. You learn slowly to know them by how little they need from you. They do not flinch when you say no, and they do not go cold when you are quiet. They were never holding a handle, so there is nothing in them that your wholeness has to take away. And the solitude itself changes its nature. There is an evening you turn down an invitation you would once have forced yourself to accept, braced for the loneliness to come and punish you for it. It does not come. What arrives instead is a quiet, almost physical relief, the feeling of a house holding the right number of people, even when that number is one. The room you spent a lifetime afraid of being left alone and turns out to be the first in years that asks nothing of you. Your sensitivity finds its real work here. For most of your life, it ran inward, scanning you for whatever needed fixing before anyone else could find it. Now it turns outward and steadies into sight. You read the rooms you walk into cleanly, the real warmth and the performed, and you neither flee the reading nor sharpen it into a weapon. You feel everything and obey none of it, and that is a stranger and better freedom than either drowning in the room or standing cold above it. You came back, and the whole way back you were terrified the descent had turned you into the exact thing you spent your life shielding other people from. Someone hard and unreachable and quietly pleased with his own distance. It did not. You stopped holding out the places they used to move you by. You refused the colder one the old reflex tried to put in their place, and you kept the one thing that was always yours, the depth, while losing the need to be taken hold of by anyone. You did not come back cold, you came back with empty hands, and the people who only ever knew you as something to grip were the only ones who had a reason to be afraid. The man walks back out through the same kitchen he once sat outside in the dark. This time the door is only a door, and no one reaches after him. If this landed as a mirror and not as a comfort, mark the place where it landed. Not to prove anything to the people who doubted you, that was never the point. Only so you remember, when the room gets loud again, that your hands are allowed to stay empty. Leave a comment in your words or in mine. I came back, and I did not come back cold.
Empaths aren't broken, they're alchemists in progress. The Alchemist's Path gives you drills, Jung-based boundaries, and 3 exclusive chapter videos to turn overwhelm into clarity. By Surreal Mind, 236-page downloadable ebook in stock. Begin now at thesurrealmind.com.